Daniel
Tommy
Jones, the
boy.
books. That's what we were discussing.
Yeah.
I'm interested in your perspective on this because obviously we have all the hoopla, and this is kind of what quote unquote mainstream media, as though one of us doesn't work for one of those outlets. This is what we do. Is that a guy in New York, for some reason that matters, where his rental houses, plays well and it becomes a big deal. And I did think he played well, and it is all under the purview, right, of the expectations and the draft day stuff. That stuff was always way far overblown than what it was, and it was more of a shot between two contrasting communities, the nerd world versus David Gettleman. They went at war against each other. So he was never as bad as they'd indicated. He was never as good as David Gettleman had said as a prospect. He was not going to not get past 7 or 8 or whatever the quote was. But I thought all the stuff that I was encouraged with him in college, the mobility, huge part of the offense, not just the read stuff, but the boots and the nakeds and just kind of moving the launch point to different spots. Impressed with that. I thought the most impressive thing, aside from the mobility, and it was bad, which we can touch on as well, was just him staring down the barrel and him playing under pressure. I mean, he took 3 or 4 major shots, staring it down, taking huge hits. Sue cracked him once, a couple of delayed blitzes cracked him, and he still completed the ball. He had a couple of throws, one on second down to Melvin Ingram when they went to their radar front of the books, which they did a lot against him, where every single person was stood up. Usually you would have one guy down in that spot. You'd think it would be Sue. Even Sue was stood up, and they would send 2, they'd send 3, they'd send 4, they'd send everyone. He had to try and figure out who was coming in from where, as did his offensive line, which basically stinks. And I thought he did a really good job just hanging in there and delivering passes. Now, part of that is just pure naivety, right? Like, he doesn't know not to take the hits yet. But there is also just a shot factor of, and it sounds silly. It's almost better in the NBA, where you just have this kind of like I know innate feel, which is silly and just like scouting parlance and what have you, where you just see a guy move and they look like a star right away. And I'm not saying he looked like a star, but he didn't look lost, and that is what I was looking for. I never thought he would be, because of the development he had and basically being in a professional program and a pro system, more so from not the schematics but the entire overview of the program, how he practiced, kind of all the stuff he had to do at the line of scrimmage at Duke compared to what most players have to do in their respective colleges. So I never thought he would be completely lost from that side of things, but in terms of playing against bigger, better, faster, stronger athletes, he didn't look lost.
Yeah, and the very first thing I wrote down was Tampa were blitz heavy to start the game, expecting run, and he took advantage of that. Mm-hmm. Lots of crossing and shallow routes, as you say, that couple plays to Evan Ingram, one of those special catches. And he took the checkdowns when Tampa Bay then went zone heavy a couple times after they blitzed him early on. He stayed alive rather than forcing anything early on, which is huge when you're a rookie. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you really just want to go down the field and get 7. He shifted with the pocket really well and kept his eyes downfield, as you said. He kind of looked comfortable. Mm-hmm. And he manoeuvred really well on bootlegs. I don't know what you think about this, but there must have been 5 or 6 plays where Cole Nassib was right in the right place at the right time. He did exactly what he needed to do, but he just ran away from him on the bootleg.
And that was such a big part of the Duke system that stuff is innate to him. I thought that the big thing you mentioned there was he has kind of his is more loosey-goosey, like newborn deer than Brady and Rosen. But Brady and Rosen have this amazing quality Rosen did in college. We haven't had a chance to see it in the pros yet, unfortunately, where they're pocket shufflers, right? Most guys, they either take these big elongated strides, or it's like Watson, where Watson kind of does these jumps, right? He kind of ducks and jumps, and it looks like he's trained for boxing, and it's a real big slide. Or you get guys who just kind of, like Cam will just kind of get out of there, right? So there's different ways of doing it. Whereas what's so fascinating about Brady, as the best to ever do it, as a pocket shuffler, and then Rosen in college, is they just kind of move like 2 inches, it feels like. And so a pass rusher's radar is right on this landing spot, and they're going to hit that because they know that's where the guy's supposed to be, and they look and they see him and they gauge that blocker, they beat that blocker, that's where the guy should be, and he's within kind of fingertip range, but he's just shuffled so slightly that it makes all the world of difference, right? It's irrelevant whether you're 2 feet away or a couple of inches away if they can't reach you. And Jones has that. It just looks more ungainly. He's only moving 2 inches, but he takes 9 different arm and shoulder movements to get to those 2 inches.
But what it does is it allows him to keep his eyes downfield.
Yes.
When you shuffle like that. If you're Lamar Jackson and you're doing this crazy 360 spin out the pocket, he loses the sight of his receivers when he does that. That's something he did well.
I thought the best example of that was his first third down, 3rd and 9, where if you go and watch, that's the perfect example of pocket manipulation, where he just takes these subtle movements to be able to slide and avoid pressure. Anticipation throw to, is it Sterling Shepard on the corner? I forget.
Yes,
but,
yeah, it was.
They were in phase. That was not an open receiver, as you would expect. Those guys were in phase. That was an anticipation throw. Perfect, like you said, eyes were downfield. If he had blinked or had to, shut his eyes a little bit, or like Baker did when he first played the Jets, that was he's ready for the stage, but he was still a bit frenzied. That was complete calm. That was not frenzied. So that type of stuff there was a lot of bad in there that is getting lost in all the discourse, as is one. But that stuff is like the unteachable. Like it just doesn't feel too big for him. And it was away at Tampa, which isn't the biggest stage, but it's still a pro football. And it's still Ndamukong Suh, and it's still Shaq Barrett whipping your left tackle every play.
Yeah, I'll just finish up what I thought was good with Daniel Jones, and then we'll move on to the other parts. But he made some excellent throws at all 3 levels, I would say, with like different ball velocities. Yep. He ripped a couple in there. He put a couple screens with nice balance on the ball. Picked up blitz well, as we said. Through to the outside of the receivers, most importantly. He made a lot of safe throws that were incompletions, but the receiver had a chance to go and get it. But they had tight coverage inside. So he put it in the right place. It was an incompletion, but I wouldn't say it was a bad throw at all. It was put in a safe place, and it didn't happen, which is, something that we think Mr. Jameis Winston on the other side of the ball could learn. And finally, he's an athlete, isn't he?
Yeah.
I'll just say this. Yeah, he's a 6'6" white guy, so we were like, oh, sneaky athletic. There's nothing sneaky about it. Like, he is.
Yeah, this is a big part of him in college, is that he's a great athlete. That was the whole point of their system at Duke, was that, hey, we're going to put Daniel Jones back there and he's an athlete and let him make plays. That was basically it. Outside of the rhythm and flow of the offense. And the other thing he did that was probably more advanced was eye manipulation. And again, we need way more of a sample size to know if that was just like, oh my God, what's happening? And oh wow, he's manipulating. Like, it takes time to figure those things out. But they ran a bunch of 3 sky. They ran those delayed blitzes, as you said. Went blitz heavy early on. Then they ran a bunch of 3 sky and just tried to confuse him on the back end when it wasn't working as well up front. And they would just start with 2 high and then vacillate between which guy moved, because they can kind of split either of those guys off. And I thought he did a really good job of picking that up and just getting out hot. Particularly to Evan. I mean, Evan Ingram, we got to have a discussion about him. I know you want to get to about Daniel Jones. But Evan Ingram is, and I was going to say slowly, but how is it slow? He's already there. He's clearly one of the best tight ends in the game. He is sneaky one of the best run blockers in all of football, which you would never, ever guess looking at the body type, and would have not been on a single scouting report coming into the draft. Every single one was glorified receiver, excellent mismatch threat, basically Aaron Hernandez. That's what he was, and Aaron Hernandez was a good run blocker too. That was what the scouting report was, and it's basically, this guy is just taller and slower than a receiver. That's why they list him as a tight end. He's become one of the best run blockers in all of football, and then you add in that after the catch threat, which we saw in that game, and then just some of the crazy one-handed grabs and just the athleticism to twist and rotate when in phase. It's hard to find someone right now playing at that level, in both phases.
Yeah, and I mean, when you can get off the ball that quickly, and you've got enough anchor and weight about you, you're going to be an effective run blocker. Like, he's slightly lighter than Kyle Juszczyk at this point. And as you say, some of those catches were insane. I'm sure everyone's seen them and don't need to go into them in too much detail, but he needs someone like that who can go and make a play for him on this very poor team. And good on him for it. But
the last thing with Ingram, just as the run blocking there, is that with a guy with his body type, when you say to someone like on a show, here you go, oh, he's become a great run blocker, looking at his physique, you would think, okay, that's like, you're mentioning Juszczyk there, the move and twist and seal and getting out in space or whatever, he crushes people in line. It almost doesn't make physical sense. We see all the time now people stick tight ends on D ends and it's just a massacre, and we're asking ourselves, why are you doing that? You don't want to do that with him all the time, but he can hold his own at that. Like, he just has unnatural power for his size.
It's going to be fun to watch because, as you said, almost everyone league-wide just labelled him as a glorified wide receiver. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, would you say that's more this year? He's turned into that as well?
No, I think he's been better than anyone thought. He just didn't get a chance to do it almost that much. It's something that you should have found along the draft process, just never really came out as a thing because I think people settled in on him pretty early. Would I say it's gone to another level this year? It'd be easy to say that, but I don't think that's necessarily true. I think I'm just focusing on it myself more.
Right. Should we go on to the bad?
Sure.
Or not necessarily the bad, things to improve on. It's his first start in the league, so don't want to go crazy on this guy. But what I will say is that everyone says Daniel Jones has incredible poise. And the term poise in the NFL is always tricky with me. Because is it poise when you don't see or don't feel the pressure from the blind side? It's not poise if you literally don't know it's there, which I think happened at least 4 times in this game.
Yeah, the play that should have been the strip sack, that was Shaq Barrett, right? From memory. Yeah. And that was Barrett knew he could crush him, but went for the ball and just missed it by like a millimeter.
Yeah, hit him in the chest, didn't he?
Yeah.
Missed the ball.
And it would have been 6 going back the other way because the right tackle was whipped too, so someone was coming in the other side to gather the ball. He just got the left tackle got beat clean. He never saw it. He never even moved his head there, so he got completely lucky. Then he scampered away. I think he threw for 15 plus yards on that play from memory. He scampered away to his left and threw on the run. So that's one of those ones where I'm not necessarily that's bad. That is bad just from a process point of view, that long term, what is the issue with him seeing the pressure and stuff. But it's also just funny from the idea of the game that had that been a strip sack and the pick he threw, that was a 3-sky pick he threw as well. It should have been probably not pick 6, but it was close to, right in the chest, and the safety dropped it. He just didn't see it on the crossing route. That's 2 massive turnovers that radically change the game. Then if he loses and he's got 3 turnovers during the game, then it's just a different conversation this week.
Yeah, that dropped interception was on 3rd and 15 on their own 20-yard line, down 10.
Yeah.
So that was the game.
Which is funny because pre-draft, the whole thing was, hey, he knows Peyton, right? Like, he knows the Mannings. The Mannings are his friends. David Cutcliffe, all these things. And he'll have all the little patent nuances that other guys don't have insight into. What was the thing Peyton was famous for? Just giving up plays. He was like, fuck it, let's live to fight another day. I'm going to take this sack now. Watch me fall to the floor like a baby and someone can touch me. And we're going to get out of here without me giving the ball away. That was the perfect time, right? Dump it off or just take the play off, basically.
One thing I will say about Daniel Jones as well is he reacted really well after contact in the pocket, but the fact there was contact on him 5 or 6 times again, and he got out alive, in another week, that's 2 more fumbles, or it's 2 more sacks. It's a brilliant story. I thought he played really well at times, but you cannot hide from the flaws that we did see. And he'll learn from it. What would you say to the Danny Dimes hype train? Would you just say put it on hold for now?
Well, yeah, the process wasn't as encouraging as the results. I mean, there was a lot of half-field reads. In fairness, though, we got to say this too, that for the drop pick, there was the drop touchdown to Saquon, which is the easiest walk-in thing ever. They did score on that drive, so it's a bit different. But I was impressed with the way he diagnosed him up front. I was impressed with the way he diagnosed stuff in the back end later in the game. It took him a few viewings, and then he got it down, which is kind of what you want to see. Over time, he'll just get it instantly. Yeah, I mean, the mobility, the arm, the IQ, that's why they drafted him, and it was all on display. So to me, there's nothing but encouragement. We're really nitpicking with that stuff because his left tackle got whipped. He has one of the worst left tackles in the game with one of the biggest contracts. His offensive line is solid inside, but crappy on the edges. So it's going to take some time for him to get used to and just figure out where his own launch point is. So there will be a play design of where the launch point should be, but he's a different guy than Eli Manning. He's going to have to figure out for himself whether he likes to move left, move right, so on and so forth, and then what that means for the rest of the offense and within the rhythm of each play design. So it's going to take time, but that's a rookie performance against a Todd Bowles defense, which is as hybrid as it gets, was doing all kinds of funky things. And I thought he did an outstanding job based on that. Was he like, an all-pro caliber player now, as people seem to be discussing? Obviously not, but why was that not as encouraging as anything we saw from the rookies last year?
Yeah, I totally agree. One thing I will add is from watching the All-22 a couple times in this game, I was introduced to the Zeitler Bob. So, for listeners you don't know, Kevin Zeitler, he looks at his centre, then at Danny Dimes, and then he does a ridiculous bob every single play. And I was trying to watch what's the defense giving them, how they lined up, what's the personnel. I just watched Zeitler every snap. I was like trying to tell if he bobs more for run or pass. It was fascinating. How do linemen do that?
Oh, I mean, if you're on the road and you're running a silent count system, almost everyone has a bob these days. The best example of that was back in the day. Who was the Patriots center the year Skarnecki wasn't coach? And they went to Denver and Brady got hit 3,000 times. Shit. Remember, was it Klein? And he tipped the play every single play because usually you try and vary the tempo of the bob. He did not that game, and neither does Zeitler. But a bunch of them bob, and a lot of them don't care about giving the snap count away, as silly as that sounds, because they think they're good enough to get in position anyway.
And last thing on this game, because I can't not say this, is Janoris Jenkins got humiliated as a human being. He's no longer himself. He's broken. He's lost. He's shattered. When he was targeted, there was 8 completions on 13 targets for 191 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Now, in fairness to him, and during the broadcast, Rodney Barber pointed this out. As terrible as he is as a broadcaster, he does know a thing or two about playing defensive back. He had no chance against him. That's like as bad a physical mismatch as you could get.
And they kept blitzing him.
Yeah.
He was 1-on-1.
So, and he got no safety help over the top. So that was, as bad as he was, and he's been terrible now since he had that like all-pro year. That was also not getting help. I mean, he looks cooked, but he also got no help. And the more troubling thing, as bad as that is, that's like, okay, we had this guy, he had a great year, it's not working no more. At the end of the year, we move on, £2 million dead cap hit, whatever it is in that region. The DeAndre Baker thing is more worrying, because that's supposed to be a young gem, and he looks awful.
Yeah.
He's all over the place. So they have a lot of things to work on the back end. That roster just needs a ton of work. That defense needs completely reworking, basically.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. We're obviously going to keep our eyes on Danny Dimes. You got any ideas for a better nickname?
Danny Dimes?
Or do we just call him Daniel Jones?
I mean, yeah, Daniel Jones. The thing with Daniel Jones is it just stinks of Duke, and then he went to Duke. It's like the most Duke name ever, so I'm sure he wants to get away from that.
No one calls him Danny. I'm sorry, look at him. He is a Daniel.
He's
and will remain a Daniel. Maybe a Dan. Mr. Jones.